Welcome to One on One. I'm Greg Bassey, your host from the Salisbury Independent newspaper. It's a big day here at PAC 14. They're all big. It's election season, and we are interviewing candidates for local county offices. Today we have State's Attorney, the challenger, Seth Mitchell. Welcome today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Now, you ran one time for State's Attorney before. This is your second try at it. Why do you want to be the State's Attorney?
Well, and you're correct. I ran in 2010. I saw the office had a lot of difficulties. And without beating up on someone.
Yeah, you can say the office was in turmoil in 2010.
Well, the former state's attorney had charges against him.
Yeah.
His even deputy was going to run against him. Deputy was killed in a car accident.
Right.
And I basically didn't see anyone else running at the time. I filed, and then the Republicans put who now is a judge, Matt Mazzarella, in. I defeated the 24-year incumbent, Davis Ruart,
yes,
whom I had worked for 3 years, many years before.
As an assistant state's attorney.
As an assistant state's attorney. And then, but I came up short with the Republican. It was a Republican year, at least when it came to the state's attorney's office of Wicomico County.
And now you're running against Jamie Dykes, who's been appointed to this seat. She's never been elected to this seat.
Right, and it's the same, to follow up on the question plus that. I ran in 2010 because I didn't like the way the office is going. Not just, if that had been someone else there, if the policies were the same, I didn't like the policies. I really strongly, I'm a Democrat, and I'm a progressive Democrat. I want to see, my slogan then, and still is, and my Facebook can be looked at to see, I tried to preserve the 2010 election materials so that you could see I haven't flip-flopped on anything, other than I'm running against someone else, but that's not a flip-flop. And the reason I'm running is because I want to see someone who understands that the state's attorney's job is not to get just convictions, not to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law, which a lot of them say. I think Jamie may have changed that, but I can tell you when I was running and when Davis was there, that was his theory. And she trained under him. So I really think that's still her forte to go that way. But I believe the beauty of being a state's attorney, and that's one reason I really would like to do this for the county, is that I can create an even playing field for everyone, not just our citizens, but anyone even passing through or college students that maybe don't vote here. Everyone should be treated the same under the law. And also, the law should have the same results no matter who you are in court. But the beauty of being a state's attorney is you have a lot of discretion. And I could decide this case doesn't merit being prosecuted. This case maybe merits being prosecuted, but we're not going for the fullest extent of the law. The person's made a mistake. Hopefully there's no one injured physically. But there are so many different types of crimes out here. And I've done a death penalty case, sole practitioner, even though with the public defender's office, but I did not have to go under their capital division, even though I had to check in with them. I've done probably about a dozen murder trials, some privately, because I'm in private practice now.
And you're well regarded. You're well regarded in town as one of the good defense attorneys.
Well, at least the person over here thinks so.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I think basically I want to see professionalism brought back to the office. And it's easier for defense attorneys too to work with professional attorneys on the other side. There's some really good ones there that have been there for a while. I'm not going to mention names, but there's some that I feel that I can trust that they say this is what's going to happen. You know, we talk about discovery, et cetera. But others, I'm seeing a problem with even getting discovery. And even the form they use, they give you a form that basically says, and if you want this, like a CD, if there is a CD, you have to do this. No, it should come to you automatically in the prerequisite time. So the reason I'm running is I want to see everyone treated fairly in this county. But I also want to hold everyone, as my slogan is seek justice, demand responsibility. Responsibility, accountability. So everyone, witnesses, with the Kavanaugh hearing, without getting into too much of it, you would expect someone who's testifying under oath to be pretty sharp on what happened, but also, as a judge, you should know you can't maintain that you were of drinking age in Maryland when it turns out your birth date doesn't match up.
Right.
He was always under the age until 21. Now, just setting that aside, I think any witness that takes a stand, they can make minor mistakes. It's memory issues. Was it, the color of something, maybe maroon versus red, SU. So,
Right.
but there are some key things that it's either true or false. And so defendants should be accountable, witnesses should be accountable, and police should be accountable. And it's a hot button topic, and it's probably one of those things I shouldn't say. But in 2010, I said, we have a lot of good police here, but we have to also hold them accountable. Showing up for court. If they don't show up for court, a bench warrant should be issued for them. Look at the paper, how many times there are null process, or at least there used to be these things. The state can recharge. Jeopardy doesn't attach, although there might be a timing issue. But I'm seeing, that happening, or the state not being prepared, they're missing a witness. They always have the ability, unlike the defense, to null process and recharge. Defense, on the other hand, can potentially, if it's a jury triable kind of charge, they could pray a jury trial. But then that clogs up circuit court. I know I'm just kind of shotgun.
No, I understand, yeah.
But I also see the practice, and this happened under Davis Roark and others, but there are two ways that certain felonies that are only triable in circuit court get to circuit court. So you can pray a jury trial on certain things, but it could be triable in district. But certain felonies, like murder, obviously, but you can either be charged by way of a district court charging document, then you're entitled to a preliminary hearing if you file the prerequisite timing, to get your preliminary hearing. So if you don't request it within 10 days, it's waived, 30 days, it's circuit court. And then the state's attorney can draft something called a criminal information. Or they can go to the grand jury, convene the grand jury, present pretty much a bare bones case. And it's pretty hard not to get an indictment if you do your homework, if you have a case. But I'm seeing this happening a lot. District court charging document, which means the defendant, if he can make bond, posts bonds. And what happens is sometimes you get to the preliminary hearing and the state says, we've indicted. He can be rearrested or she can be rearrested, and it goes to circuit court. But might have to post bond again or try to get the bond to roll over. But it's not efficient. It serves virtually no purpose unless there's some kind of where you could do sealed indictments where maybe it's a conspiracy or a scheme among many people, and in which case you can use sealed indictments and go to the grand jury, which is confidential. So that's just one of many. It's not Jamie Dykes' fault per se, but she was sworn in December, as I recall. So she was the interim when Ella Dishroom stepped down, who had taken Matt Massarella's spot for about 2 years when he was appointed judge.
Right.
And I'm seeing she's had enough time. I don't think it shows a lot of seniority, a lot of experience, not even a year, but she's had enough time to get a lot of things back in order, at least put it in order. And I'm still saying the same. I mentioned before discovery, the preliminary hearings versus indictments and grand jury. My argument is that you need a senior attorney that has a lot of experience. My 30 years, 3 years as an assistant state's attorney with serious felonies, but also starting out in the lower court, right from law clerking. But then almost 9 years, on my literature I talk about over 8, but I was really close to 9 years as a public defender. And I trained other attorneys in murder cases. I did, as I think I said before, I know we had a short break, but that I did a death penalty case by myself. which is unusual with the public defender's office. But I had the pleasure of training other attorneys in murder trials and lesser trials, one of who actually is a judge now. But I love teaching. And before I went to law school, I worked towards teaching certification after already having a degree. But I also have had a love of law since I was a kid. And I just want to help the county be looked at as professionals, not have witnesses not show up. I had a case, we were talking before recording, I had a murder trial where the state did not have a cause of death and they had not disclosed the expert as an expert. So the person who could render the opinion of cause of death, they can't give an opinion as to cause of death as a layperson, but only as an expert, and they weren't disclosed as an expert. Those are serious mistakes. Now, that has not happened under Jamie's watch, a murder case that I know of like that, but there are a lot of issues, and it takes someone who's perhaps, maybe ageism, but it's hard to go to someone who is 60 years old plus and say, I've done this for X amount of years. Oh, half the time you have. Whereas there's no one in that office that's going to be senior to me more than maybe 6 months. And I worked with them, one in particular that I think highly of, but we're roughly the same age and we overlap for about 3 years. And there's something to that. You need a level-headed person who's going to hold people accountable. And I mentioned I have a pilot's license. Checklist are really important. Don't ever think that you're not going to forget something. So I'm a strong believer. You're doing a murder trial, you make sure you hit all the elements, that the person's ID'd, what county it is, etc. I'm not seeing that. And I'd rather lose a small case with a new attorney in district court than a big case because they haven't been thoroughly trained. Sorry, I went off.
No, that's good. That's good. One thing I've noticed in watching Matt in the job and Ella in the job during the opioid crisis here is that they've sort of entered a lot of these cases as if they're counselors. You see them at the emergency rooms involved right when the overdose occurs. Is it almost a situation where the prosecutor's becoming like a social worker?
Well, and that I don't have a problem with. As I said before, the beauty of being these state's attorneys, you can decide what cases you're going to prosecute. For example, it seems inconsistent when you can have one state, Colorado, where you can grow marijuana and dispense it. And we do have dispensaries now for medical, but you could have someone who actually still goes to jail for a joint. Now it depends on the weight, but they can still get jail time. So you can look, where do you want to put your resources in prosecution? And the opioid crisis, I've seen ads. I don't have a problem with saying, if you go to the hospital, we don't want you to be afraid to go get treatment because you think you're going to jail for that. Now, obviously, if someone has been murdered, etc., it's not carte blanche. But I do think it doesn't have to be the state's attorney or even the attorney. There can be support staff that could do that, which then makes it a little cleaner if there is some kind of criminal conduct that's coupled with a drug situation, which could be like, I had a murder case in Somerset County that was also a drug case where someone broke in, and I was defense counsel, broke in and shot the person who was a very small-time marijuana dealer. Shot him, he returned fire, killed the guy. They charged him with murder. He had been shot first. It was rather kind of inconsistent to argue that, my client had shot the guy in the head first. But the point is that if you said, well, all drug cases are kind of off the table, we're just counselors, I wouldn't want someone going there and getting information that couldn't be used later. So it's close. Now, the opioid crisis, it is carfentanil is just killing people. Heroin itself, and there are other drugs, and statistically, there's still almost the same percentage of population of overdoses. But now we're seeing it in opioids. And I really think we need to divert a lot of things towards treatment and not incarceration. And honestly, most addicts are going to relapse. So if you put someone on probation and then they relapse and you throw the book at them, there's probably a 90% chance they are going to be relapsing. It doesn't seem consistent. That doesn't mean you can just let them walk. But the key is, if there are users, to get them back straight. And often there's got to be some fundamental reason for them to do that. And it's not just to stay out of jail. They have to have a purpose in their life. Can the state's attorney's office give them a purpose? Not necessarily. But if this community is even with all the people in it, whether you're black, white, Hispanic, Korean, you should all be treated the same. And we have a large population here of minorities. My son served in Korea. He's in the U.S. Army. And there are Korean restaurants here, the Korean church. A friend of mine at the church I could go to is Korean. And I want to see us come up to the 21st century, not go back to make America great when there was racism galore. And I think the difference with the Democrats, and I've been a Democrat virtually my voting life, is that I've been committed to these principles of fairness and equality. I have a problem when Jamie Dykes was sworn in. My understanding is she changed party affiliations. In 2010, they asked me to do that too, and I said, that's disingenuous. You got to have someone who's committed to principles. That's also a principle. And I don't have the budget she has. I don't have the staff she has. I don't have the police force. Her husband is a former state trooper. I think he's still active. I think we need some separation so that the state's attorney can hold everyone accountable and not be whispered in their ear as to what they should do and what's really happening. And I'm really worried for the county. As I was in 2010, I predicted Freddie Gray and those things before there was a name, and it's been happening. But I also want to say there are people out there that need to be prosecuted, and you better know how to prosecute a case. 30 years, I know both sides of this. It's a chess game, although I hate calling it a game. But you better be prepared, and if I'm elected, I expect everyone on my staff to know the law backwards and forwards, including ethical considerations and discovery. And there'll be reviews. We'll have roundtable reviews, district court, circuit court, where are your case is now, who's been summoned, what do you need to prove this case, are you going to want to go after this person, can we make this person whole again? And I know I'm talking a mile a minute, but this is something I'm passionate about. People who know me that I've defended or see me prosecute, I think they'll know I'm sincere. I will, if I get this one term, I'm near retirement. I'm 61. If I was sworn in the month later in February, I'd be 62. I would like to leave a legacy. I have a family history of doctors in the family. My brother's an attorney, but I want to serve the community, and I saw my grandfather do it. The Seth Hurdle building's named after him on my mother's side. My dad delivered lots of people here and was a general practitioner, Andrew, Crispin Mitchell, Chris. I just want to give back to the community. I'm expecting a grandchild to be born in a month and a half to my treasurer, my daughter, Sarah Mitchell. Really looking forward to it, but she'll be taking care of the kid. I will have plenty of time to do what needs to be done.
How can people get a hold of you if they've got questions?
They can, I've actually added my literature, but if they look at Facebook, I would be under W. Seth Mitchell for State's Attorney. They can find me in the local book online. They could call my business number, my cell number. I have a pretty open door policy, and I expect to do that also if I'm elected.
He's Seth Mitchell. He's running for State's Attorney in Wicomico County. We were thrilled that he was here today. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience.
We're continuing our interviews with people who are running for office in Wicomico County, and today we've got one of the big fish, our state's attorney, our prosecutor, someone who can put you in jail, Jamie Dykes. Welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Now, I understand you only put people in jail if they've been bad.
Yes. No. If they've committed a crime, then that's who we want. That's who we want.
And the judge decides, not you.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So, how does it feel to be the state's attorney? You kind of had this thrown at you, basically.
It's an honor to lead the office. We've got 18 really great prosecutors who want to contribute to the community in a positive way. We've got 18 other administrative staff. It's an honor.
And the job's changed over the years. It's not just put bad guys in jail. There's a lot of social stuff that's involved in getting out ahead of crimes. The opioid crisis in the county, State's Attorney's been very involved in that. And to be at the scene of all these things that go on, to work with the police directly, that's also changed a lot. So you're like out nights.
Oh, yes. Me, my people, we're on call 24/7, most of us. We respond to crime scenes, we respond to the hospital for really sick kids, dead people, dead children. We're reviewing search warrants. Another prosecutor and I were out on the June 6th homicide at 606 Priscilla. We were out for about 36 hours on that case, both of us. So.
Wow. Is the job what you thought it would be? You were an assistant state attorney for a long time, so you've seen the job, but being in charge, is it what you thought it would be?
It's been more challenging than I anticipated. And it's like being a parent. Everybody can tell you what it's like, but until you experience it,
Right.
but it's been good. It's been, it feels right. It feels like it's the right thing to do. I'm where I'm supposed to be.
How are we doing as a community in terms of policing our crime rates, the direction we're heading? It's not just you. You're a part of an element with the County Sheriff's Office, Salisbury City Police, State Police, what happens on the court side. How are we doing?
We're doing great. The partnerships and the communication is crucial to effective policing.
And it hasn't always been good.
It hasn't. It hasn't, and we've got a really good thing going.
Yeah.
So I'm really hopeful for what the future holds.
What's the biggest thing we need to work on?
Long term,
The drugs still?
yes, the drugs are a problem. Mental health is a problem. People use drugs because there's an issue. It's so mental health is, and I think that goes back to the family. How a child is raised in a family, and we learn to treat each other. How in society, how we learn to treat each other in our homes, and where parents are distracted by drug addiction, mental health, abuse or neglect. It's problematic, and it's a systemic problem that I think I don't have all the answers, but I think we can work together towards solving it.
And that's one of the things that's different too. You used to wait for the crime to occur and then jump into action. But it seems like you're involved in so many different programs that try to prevent these things from happening.
Yes, going way back, the Narcotics Task Force, that's proactive,
Right.
And as opposed to reactive. We are certainly getting out with the community, working with the health department and the COAT team to support them in their efforts to get people clean off of drugs. So there are lots of opportunities that way, and I think we would be doing the community a disservice if we weren't involved proactively to some extent.
And our co-team, which you have several people involved in, it's being looked at now as a national model.
It is. Lori Brewster has done wonders. She has seen the potential, and she's made it happen. So.
What drives me crazy as a reporter is the number of my readers who don't understand the judicial system.
Okay.
They just think everyone should be sent to jail immediately just because that's how it looks. Do you face that a lot in a court situation or with juries or?
I'm not quite sure the best way to answer that.
I mean, it drives me crazy where I have to
So-
explain to people like, no, that's not how it works at all.
It's not. Public safety is. There are many, avenues, and the risk to public safety is what we look at, whether we request incarceration or not. In terms of an addict who has what we'll call a simple drug possession or a nonviolent sort of petty offense, the research has shown that they are best served with mental health treatment, addictions treatment, and a period of supervision. That long term, that's where we get our benefit. Now, with violent crime, on the other hand, if somebody's proven that they're a public safety risk, then I don't think we have a choice but to take them off the street.
Right.
So now, usually we request a period of probation also to ensure that their reentry into the the public is they're going to succeed.
And sometimes you'll see really bad guys who did bad things, and you just know in your heart they did it. But then you all can't get anyone to testify against them because people are afraid or whatever happens. How important is that to the system, and how much trouble are we in there?
So it's the biggest impediment that I've found, and where my focus early in my career had been on child abuse cases. We didn't have that so much. So handling the more violent crime more recently, it's an incredible challenge. And there are investigative tools that we can use to help us around that. But at the end of the day, it makes prosecuting violent crime very challenging.
How much pressure are you all under to live perfect, ideal, professional existences so that you guys can't be questioned as the person who's trying to convict somebody? What's that like?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Tom, let me do that again. Can I do that again? Oh, damn it! Oh.
I'm sorry. I got in trouble last time I was here because I laughed too loud. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Redo that question, Greg.
Prosecutor conduct.
I don't see the relevance, but go ahead.
Prosecutor conduct?
Do you mean personally, professionally?
Well, they always attack the questioner. I mean, you know what I mean? It's more about...
We have to wear the white hats.
Okay, we'll do that, yeah. What's the pressure like? You guys are always wearing the white hats.
We have to wear the white hats. We have to be better. We have to do better. Justice requires it. So we are held to a different standard, and in most cases, rightfully so.
Your predecessors, the seat that you're in, now you haven't been elected to this yet, but so many of our state's attorneys have ended up as judges.
That's true.
Is that ever in your future?
Not for the foreseeable future. I'm committed to this office. This is a calling for me, and it was since my first 9 months prosecuting. There's lots of work that needs to be done, and in my opinion, the office needs stability.
How is, we're about to do a story in the paper where a national group has just reviewed our Salisbury crime rates and is about to declare us like one of the fastest successful rates going down municipality in the country.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to have a nice story about that. Do you get a sense that things are safer in Salisbury?
I will say over the summer, I review every felony in the office, so I saw a distinct decline in violent crime, other than the homicide on June 6th, but by and large, there was a decline. So I was hopeful for that, and I hope that that's the case.
So it seems like to me this summer was safer in terms of violent crime than last summer, certainly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Last summer was scary for all residents of Wicomico County, but certainly Salisbury, and we had a much quieter summer for which my staff, and I'm sure the entire community were grateful.
One of the rules in management is when you get promoted, you spend like the first year doing your old job the way you would have done it if you didn't have a boss. So when you became state's attorney, did you all of a sudden want to lead all the great prosecution, the murder prosecutions, take the big cases for yourself, or do you delegate? How do you operate your thing?
That will always be my inclination, is to take the hardest, the messiest. But when I came in, the office needed strong leadership, and I couldn't do that and try cases at the same time. We have a number of prosecutors in the office that, with the right support, can handle those cases, and at that moment in time, I felt that the resources were better spent with me leading the office that way, as opposed to trying cases.
I'd like to ask a male sexist question, and I apologize, but Chris Heiser is about to become state's attorney in Worcester County. I know you know her.
Yes, yes.
So we're going to have women state's attorneys in both counties, first time elected. Is that a big deal?
It
Now,
shouldn't be.
When I talk to Barbara Duncan about this, she always gets mad because it's not a big deal. But
Right. It shouldn't be a big deal,
Right.
right? I mean, some of the best prosecutors I've ever worked with are women.
Yeah.
I don't think it should be a big deal. I don't think it should be. But in some ways, I see that it is.
But do you get attention for that?
I don't pay attention to attention. I have too big of a job to do to be distracted with. I'm going to work trying to do the right thing every day, trying to lead my people to do the right thing every day. So I can't get bogged down with that.
What's the biggest case you ever won?
There was a horrific child abuse case. It happened, I believe, I'm going to get the date right, June 9th of 2009. I responded to PRMC for a little girl. She was 5 at the time, had the flattest affect I have ever seen on a child. She had bruises around her neck, bruises to her forehead. Come to find out, that's how she was put in timeout. The man of the house, not her father, would grab her around the neck and slam her face into the corner of the wall. When the day that she and her brother were adopted, I was able to be there. And that is probably the biggest success that I've had. There are no winners nobody comes to the state's attorney's office because they had a good thing happen to them.
Right.
But that this child and her brother got a new lease on life, that was probably the best case that I had. I mean, I've had a number of excellent convictions and great sentences, but there comes a time when that feels hollow because there are no winners. The 2 children that got adopted, by far.
How is it possible to not get too personally involved in that stuff?
We can't. That's why I have great victim witness coordinators, because they assist us in all cases. They're available, but they have contact with the victims and the witnesses so that I can focus on the facts and the law. And essentially, in some ways, they're social workers, to help get the victim and the family through the process. So I try not to get distracted that way, but victim services are incredibly important to me. I want everyone to come out of this process feeling as if they were heard and that justice was afforded in some fashion. There is a myth, however, that the criminal justice process will provide closure, and I don't find that it ever does.
Right. Right. And that's got to be the hardest thing ever. I mean, for you to have to deal with, because some people are never going to have that closure.
Mm-hmm. It's not something that anyone can give them. It's something that they have to give themselves, and that's a hard, incredibly. I hope I'm not in their shoes ever, and I wish that no one had to be. I mean, that's why it's important that when we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a defendant has committed a crime of violence, that we get the longest period of incarceration, because if we've been able to prove that, that's an incredible feat, given the challenges of prosecuting today. And more likely than not, they're going to commit another crime of violence.
Right. So. I'm glad you recognized the victims thing. I mean, my experience, I haven't been a victim, thank goodness, but going to the state's attorney's office, and I've not been to the new office, so this is the old office. But I would go in there to meet with an attorney to interview them for a story, and you see victims come in and want to file something, and just what they're going through emotionally. I mean, it takes a lot to go in there and to start this journey that they're going to be on. And if the person at the desk doesn't treat them exactly in a certain way, they're going to leave. I mean, you just know that. And there's just a huge burden on everybody in there to try to do things correctly.
And do the right thing. It shouldn't be a burden, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it shouldn't. That's what we're there for. That's what we do. And if anyone feels that it's a burden, it's probably not the office for them.
Right, right.
So.
You're out and about. How can people get a hold of you? They want to ask you questions or connect with you?
My email or my cell phone.
However you want people to call you.
443-497-1173. Email is jamielynndykes@gmail.com. JamielYNNDYKES.
Well, we support you and we wish you really well in this election.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
I'm Greg Bassett from the Salisbury Independent Newspaper. Another edition of 101, special election edition here on PAC 14.
First Shore Federal is proud to support PAC 14 and one-on-one. We'd encourage every business to support PAC 14 and pick a program and support it, and let's make a difference.